And welcome to the show. Our guest today, Madeleine Black, is a powerful voice in the fight against shame, trauma, and victim blaming. With her work spanning multiple platforms, she brings attention to issues often left in the shadows. She has shared her message on the TEDx stage twice with her talks, Why I'm Shaming Shame at TEDx University of Glasgow and Unbroken, Speaking the Unspeakable at TEDx Glasgow, inspiring audiences to break their silence and reclaim their voices. She's also a writer, having contributed to the Metro with her article on Duffy and the realities of victim blaming. Through her new podcast, she continues her mission to empower individuals, challenge societal norms, and transform lives. She invites listeners to join her in a courageous conversation that challenges the status quo and fosters resilience. So, welcome to the show, Madeleine. So great
Thank
to
you
have
so
you here.
much, Anu. Lovely to be here with you.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our talk today because you have had a journey.
Yes, could say that.
Amazing journey. Wow. So, obviously, I will be adding all the links to all your resources at the end of this show anyway. But it'll be great for you to kind of tell us a bit about your background and what inspired you to actually start speaking out against shame and victim blaming.
Yeah, it's actually just was my 10th anniversary from going public. So I share my own story of sexual violence. That's really what I speak about. I speak about rape and sexual violence. And it happened to me when I was much, much younger. When I was 13, I was gang raped by two men. And I never spoke about it for years and years. And eventually, obviously, I decided to share my story. But for a long time, I was always one of these women. When I did contribute to an article, I was just, blanked out picture, and I just maybe had my first name or my age, but I never gave any details. But on my own journey, they came to a point when I decided to forgive. I chose, which is a big topic, I suppose.
Mm.
And the founder of an organization called the Forgiveness Project, Marina Cantacuzino, asked me if she could share my story. And she said, you could be completely anonymous, don't need to put your photo or your name. But by that point, I just had had enough of being ashamed. I just thought, why should I still be ashamed for a crime committed against my body? And so that's what I did. I shared my story with my name and my photo. It was the 22nd of September, 10 years ago, 2014, and I've never looked back. And actually, by stepping into the shame, by putting my name and my photo and sharing my story, it dilutes the shame. When I was hiding from it, when I didn't go public or even tell many of my friends, it was a perfect place for it to grow, in secrecy and in the dark and not talking about it. So actually, standing in the limelight, I don't expect everyone to do it, but it has, yeah, just really diluted its power over me, I would say.
Does, yeah. Oh my God, it really does. And yeah, I mean, I've been seeing that a lot. I think one of the biggest inspirational movies was when Eminem did it in his movie when, he was being bullied. And so what he did was he stood on stage and he started to rap about, all the things that were wrong in his life, the fact that he was from a trailer park. And that was it. It gave no one else any, basically they had no power to put him down anymore. And I just think, that's exactly it. So
And
if we
it's
own
almost
it,
like it doesn't have the power over us
yeah,
because it's not really anyone else doing it. We shame ourselves by our inner thoughts. I assumed that people would be disgusted if they knew the details. They would look at me differently. They wouldn't want to speak to me. They wouldn't want to know me anymore, or people would judge me. And so it was me holding myself back, and then buying into the victim blaming messages that are around anyway. Well, I'd lied and I'd bought alcohol and I met boys. I didn't tell my parents where I was really staying. We stayed in an empty flat. So all these things just contributed, I think, till eventually I thought, I've got nothing to be ashamed about. The shame, actually, I held on to this inappropriate shame for years. It always belonged to the two men who decided to rape me. It was never my shame to start with, but we hold on to it for a long, long time, far too long.
we do. And we're just taught that it was our fault
Yes,
at
yes.
such a young age. It's just, yeah, it's horrible. So yeah,
And when it happened to me, this was the late 1970s, there wasn't even any social media. So we can't even blame that influence. But already, just culturally, I just thought, well, I'd put myself into that situation. So obviously, I got what I deserved, so to speak.
So exactly. But I'm so glad that you decided to come out in the open and also to show yourself and not to hide away because again, I can resonate when I was actually writing my book. I was hiding behind those pages, and I wasn't actually openly still talking about it. It was only when I started to podcast that I really started to heal.
Yeah,
Being here on camera and being
absolutely.
like spreading your messages globally, that is healing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
owning your story, really, isn't it? So there was still a little bit of an anonymity, I can never say that word, when you were being an author, but actually showing your face as something very powerful. This is me, and I don't care who knows. I
exactly.
mean, I'm not saying it was an easy decision. I was still a bit nervous sharing my story because not many people really knew the details, or if they did know some details, they didn't know that it was near fatal that night. So, yeah, sharing everything about it is actually, it really shifted. It changed something completely inside of me.
It does. Oh, amazing. Yeah. And I just feel like it's amazing that you've had the opportunity to actually present on the TEDx stage, not once but twice.
Yeah,
So
I was very lucky. The first time I applied, and it took me 2 attempts to get in, and but the second time I was invited. So the first time it's good because I've done two different types. One was live with an audience, about 3,000 people, and the second one was actually in this little office. So I just pushed everything out the way, and it was just the blank wall behind me, and just made sure the family were out, and the dog was taken for a walk, and hoped that the window cleaner didn't ring the doorbell that day, and that was it. So I've done a virtual and a live one, so it was good. But also, you know it's brilliant to stand on that platform because it has got such a name, but we know how many women, men this affects. Our stories aren't uncommon, sadly, by any means. They're the stories of many, many people. So when I'm standing on that red dot, if it's in my office virtually or live, I always think of people that are listening. It's not really about me speaking, even though it is a great platform to speak for. It's really just like just to serve other people, just to share that message that you actually can get past what happens to you. You can move on and have a great life. Whatever your trauma, not necessarily sexual violence, any trauma, we can, with the right support and the right mindset, the right attitude, I guess, we can really move on.
we really can, yeah. And so, I know you talk a lot about forgiveness as well. So how is that? Because I know there's forgiving yourself and then there's also forgiving the perpetrators.
Yeah, I guess forgiving myself was the first one. And I will say in my TEDx that I'm very clear. I'm not a forgiveness preacher. I don't tell people, the only way you're ever going to heal is to forgive. And I always say that I was an accidental forgiver. And I would never, ever forgive the act of rape. I'm very clear about that because it just, yeah, it's a total violation on your mind, your body, your psyche. But it came to me kind of organically. The idea was planted in my head by my therapist actually when I was going back when my eldest daughter became 13. I had about 3 years of therapy. And just very near to the end of the sessions, he just said, gave me this question to think about, which blew my mind. Maybe they weren't born rapists. And that just sent me on this, first of all, anger, so angry that he could say something so stupid and ridiculous. But then I just really started to wanted to understand how, because how did they know to dehumanize and degrade me and be so violent? Because they weren't really an awful lot older than me. They were maybe like 18, 19, and I just felt compassion in my heart somehow towards them because I thought I can heal myself and I can build a good life, which I think I've done. But they, to live with what they've done, I don't think that's an easy job. And then I just thought, to really let it go, I could just choose to forgive, just to cut my ties to them, cut my ties to the past. It was stopping me in so many ways. And it was like, when I look at the word, it's like for giving me a better chance or for giving me peace, because I thought I deserve peace with it all in my head. And it really just allowed me to let it go with understanding and compassion. So, yeah, but it took me by surprise. It really did. I never thought I would forgive them. Never.
And that takes a lot of courage, hence, the courage cultivator.
Yeah, and interesting. Last year, I went to see Gabor Mate. He was speaking in Glasgow, and it came up on my Facebook timeline. You get the memories, and he had said something about forgiveness. When you do the work and you heal yourself, forgiveness comes organically. And I thought I never looked at it like that. Always thought it was because of this sentence that my therapist said to me, but maybe it was like the last piece of the jigsaw that we can just get to a place of peace and let it go, just knowing we can't change anything. They are just pictures. They can't harm me anymore. I'm not what happened to me. That was just one night in my life. We're so much more than what happens to us. It's time to look forward, I guess.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And I just feel like forgiveness as well. And you go through like stages of it, don't you? Because at first you're just angry, there's a lot of probably, emotions there. And then, eventually when you start to really heal, then you can actually start to, understand a bit more about what happened, and then, maybe have a bit of empathy and compassion, just understand that maybe they're not well,
Yeah.
maybe they've had traumatic childhood, and because again, I've had to go through all of this as well, and I explain a lot of this to clients as well about even narcissism. I mean, where does that come from? Why do people end up being narcissists? And a lot of it is down to their own childhood trauma.
Absolutely.
Neglect,
And
abandonment.
it comes with understanding, doesn't it? I mean, it doesn't excuse what they did, but it comes with understanding. When I saw that they're just human beings, and I just thought we're just a very immature species living on a planet, and we have a lot to learn.
Yeah, we
That's really
do.
what I saw, and I really saw as well that it's not really about what happens to us; it's what we do with it. That's what matters. And for years, I didn't do very well with it at all until I decided to flip around. I was preventing myself from living, really.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Yeah, and then obviously, you've done your talks and also with the Metro as well. So, you wrote an article for them. Wow.
Yes,
So,
they approached me and asked me if I would write an article. It was when I think Duffy had come out and spoke about violence that she'd experienced. She was kidnapped, I think, for a few days, and it was the victim blaming online and the jokes about it, and it was just horrific on Twitter. And they asked me, and I just said yes, of course.
and so, how do you feel that the media can play a role in actually shaping perceptions about trauma survivors?
Yes, so huge. I was actually speaking to someone the other day on a Zoom, and she has a case coming up, and her lawyer said to her, "Well, you're a very believable witness. You're very consistent, and you present yourself well." And I think that's not really talking about the media, that's the court system. But I think, what if she was someone that wasn't articulate or wasn't presented well? Would that make she less of a chance in her case? I just thought it was such a judgmental thing to say, that she's a believable witness. And that's really what we do in the press as well, though. We'll say, well, she was wearing lacy thongs, or she went drinking, or she went up to his hotel room. So we're already planting that seed of, yeah, it was her fault. There's so much victim blaming. And, when like Sarah Everard, for example, when she was kidnapped and raped by the police officer, she was a nice white blonde young woman and didn't deserve that. But there's many women of color, many other types of women working in prostitution that are kidnapped and raped and killed, and we don't get a mention from them. It's
Yeah.
very judgmental out there, and it really doesn't help women to come forward. They think, well, if she doesn't have a chance in her case, well, what chance am I going to have? And yeah, it is pretty depressing out there, and it can be pretty exhausting, but it still just fires me to carry on, though.
Yeah, no, and yeah, and regarding like drug rape as well. I mean, that's been very
Yes,
common,
we've
and but you,
just seen the awful case. We're still, I think the whole world is awaiting the outcome of the trial of Giselle Pellicotte over in France, where her husband drugged her, and for 10 years she was raped. They know at least 50 men. Not one of them came forward. One of them said he thought it was okay because she was dead. And you think, how does that make it okay? You're going to be charged with necrophilia as well. It's like crazy. And then there's some men that were approached and declined. You think, well, why didn't they then go and say something that this man is drugging his wife and offering her up for rape? And he was only found out because he had been caught upskirting or something else. It was another crime not connected to that. And then they found the videos on his computer of what these men were doing to her. And he was drugging her so much that she thought she had dementia. She was going to her doctor. She had memory lapses and had no idea what was taking place. So she's amazing because she holds her head high. She shows her face, and she says the shame is not going to be on the inside, it's going to be on the outside. And I'm doing this for other women that have also been raped and drugged at the same time, to show them we've got nothing to be ashamed about. So she's like my hero at the moment. She's amazing, amazing woman.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And absolutely, I just hope she's out there and she's spreading the word because yeah, we shouldn't be carrying any of that shame or
No.
guilt or blame.
Well, the real justice will be whether we see that justice happens.
Yeah.
If these her husband and the 50 men are charged, then we will see. I think that's what the world is watching, what takes place in France, because their laws are just as bad as ours, their conviction rates.
Really
So,
not good at all. Yeah. And so, what challenges do you actually face when you actually bring these conversations into the mainstream media, and how do you actually navigate them?
well, when I'm asked to speak, people know what I speak about, so that I don't have too many challenges within there. But I suppose on social media, occasionally I maybe get the odd troll, but I just don't feed them anymore. I don't interact. I just block them and move on, or I tag a few people and they will just respond on my behalf. But yeah, there's always going to be people like, what about men and what about this? And if it's a post regarding gender-based violence against women, we're not disputing it doesn't happen to men. I do speak out for men as well, but this is specifically a post about women. So go start another post. Go speak about it yourself. Or yeah, it can be very exhausting, but I don't really engage too much on people that are just going to give me a bad time. But thankfully, I have to say, really, I've never really been trolled too badly or had negative. Sadly, I've just always attracted many people that have had a similar situation, because I know there's so many women and men out there that have been in a similar situation. But the more of us that speak out, we just all stand with each other. We're like an army, I guess, just bringing light to the situation, an army of light.
True. And also, your new podcast has been gaining a lot of attention.
Well, it's not so new anymore because I actually don't run it anymore. I stopped. I started in lockdown because I stopped working as a therapist, and then I didn't get any speaking engagements. Obviously, we couldn't meet in person. I did some over Zoom. So I decided I wanted to offer some stories of hope. So I only spoke to people that were thrivers. They had all overcome adversity, but they bounced not just back, but forward. And they were all in their own way making a difference to society or the world. And it was brilliant because it gave me something to do. I learned about podcasting, even though I had a producer, I tutored a bit. But I sat in their wonderful energy. Then I got to share that. And December will be 2 years since I haven't run it. But every week I get my weekly, podcast downloads. And last week was like 400 downloads. And I think I don't promote it in any way at all now. So it's still in, I think, over 100 countries, and it's still in the top 1.5%. So it's quite incredible. I was very lucky. I know amazing people and had incredible guests on, so it was
And
good.
that just goes to show that, people need this, that they need to
Yeah.
be hearing about these stories and about
Yeah.
resilience and
But it
hope.
was called Unbroken, and then the tagline was Healing Through Storytelling. So I'm a great believer of storytelling and what it can do. And Marina, who runs a forgiveness project, she doesn't call us storytellers, she calls us story healers. And I love that word because I think there's a lot of healing that comes for someone that hears a story. If I share my story, for example, that happened to me listening to other people, and someone hears it at the right time in their life, it can just give them a whole new map to navigate life. It can a whole new direction to go into which they never had even thought about. So I love the power of sharing our stories. I really do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that really warms my heart. And so in terms of kind of if there's anybody out there who's currently struggling with shame, what
Yep.
strategies can they actually use to actually confront and dismantle this shame that they experience?
Yes, I would say, it's never too late to find your voice. I know that's really, really tricky, but find a therapist, find someone that you trust, be very careful that you share it with, or just tell yourself your story. I think when we deny it and we minimize it, and when we hold it in, when we don't give it oxygen, it really does hold us back. So I think the very act of speaking about it, literally, vocalizing it, it shifts something energetically in our side. It's like we lock it deep down in a big, deep, chest freezer inside of us. But when you open that lid, it lets some air in and it moves and it changes things. So find someone if you can to share your story with. And if you can't, write it down for yourself and just read it and you know, just accept, find a way. It's not so easy, really, is it? Just, I didn't get to this place overnight. People maybe listen to me speak and think it's okay for her, but it's a journey, as you said in the very start. It's not an overnight fix. It is a slow marathon. It's not a sprint, and it's it's all accumulative. So I did a bit of work and then I'd be okay for a while, and maybe a few months later I'd have to go back into therapy again, or a few years later. It's like shedding the layers of shame along with the trauma, but the shame is part of the trauma and the shame lies to you. So I guess it's also learning not to listen to what the shame said. You know, my shame said, because I also had fears, one of them told me if I spoke about it, they would find me and they would kill me, and I believed them. So I think it's not listening to what our mind tells us. Our mind isn't always our friend, and to really test it. You know, if we just stay in that mindset of, oh, better not say anything because they'll think this or this will happen, find someone that you trust and just say, you know, can I share this with you, or this happened to me, and look at the evidence, check what happened. You know, I think in my second talk, I talk about doing my first one and I was okay. You know, nobody ran out the room, nobody cried, nobody fainted from the shock of what I had to say. So the fear is often what holds us back. The fear of doing things is far worse than actually doing it themselves.
True. Yeah, it is. It's all about confronting those fears, you know,
Yeah,
and,
and
and
stepping
saying,
out of our comfort zone, what we think is our comfort zone, even
mm,
if it's fear-ridden or shame-ridden, you know, shining a light on it, stop keeping it in the dark.
yeah, no, absolutely. And how do you feel that society can actually better support trauma survivors and reduce the culture of victim blaming?
I think to have an understanding of how trauma survivors, you know, like within a court system, for example, you know, if someone freezes when they're on the witness stand, it's not because they don't remember or they don't want to speak. It's a normal phenomena of being caught or being triggered. So there's, yeah, very little understanding. And I don't want to, you know, put people off, but some people would just maybe go on a short course and say they're a trauma specialist. Be very careful who you go to, check their accreditations and make sure that they are accredited to a board of counselors or psychotherapists. You know, it's not enough to go and just do a weekend course and say you're a trauma specialist or you're a coach or whatever. You need to go and see someone that specializes in trauma, that can really understand the many multi-layered and stages and what it is you need to work through, because you really need to dive into the darkest of spaces that you've just avoided for years.
Mm, very true. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And it's not just, you know, it's not a one time only. Like I said, it was over years of doing not just talking therapies, therapeutic body work, trying alternative therapies, because it gets caught in our bodies as well. It's not just in our mind. So sometimes talking itself is not enough. We need to
Exactly.
shift it in another way energetically, which is why we get triggered. And, you know, we hear something, smell something, see something. It's a very physical reaction as well. And so when we get triggered, as you know, our heart can race, or we can feel sick, or we get dizzy, pins and needles. So it's our mind and our body are very linked. So I think we need to try to work them together.
Yeah, yeah. And what strategies worked well for you?
Well, I realized that I left my body on that night, but I never really came back in. I was absent for many, many years. And so when I saw that, and when I also saw my fears, I didn't realize then, but I was started to do some exposure therapy. So all the things I avoided, I put myself into the situations that I would never have done. Little things to start with, which people might think aren't so big, but I would get into my car and not put the buttons down, or I would walk into a room in my house and not put the light on, or I would force myself to take my rubbish bin down the end of the garden, even if it was dark. So all these things that I just avoided because that was just easier, and then didn't need to be scared. But by avoiding, you're creating that fear as well. You're keeping yourself in a permanent state of fear. And then when I saw I was out my body, to do things to land back in, so yoga and walking and weightlifting and karate and windsurfing, very physical things to land back in, and then breath work and sweat lodges and plant medicine and hypnosis and just, yeah, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it does sometimes, you have to try different modalities to see which one works for you because we're
Yeah.
not the same.
When
So
I was really, really caught in the denial after when I went to therapy for these 3 years, I just didn't want to believe what I was being shown. My therapist said, you know, you should maybe try some therapeutic massage, which I didn't know much about. And the very first time I went along and line up on the plinth, and I heard this woman as it got started, you know, crying and fighting and shouting with the therapist, and in my very, you know, polite English mindset, I'm thinking, who's making all that noise? And then I realized it was me. It was all coming from me, and it really it shocked me, but it really helped because I thought I couldn't trust my mind then, but I had to trust my body because
Yeah.
there's no way I could make my body respond in that way. And they just brilliant people. They have this ability to unlock all the trauma that's caught in your cells. And so I went for quite a long time, and just the way my body responded, I would be sick, I would shake, I would just cry, and I just, that's all in me. That has to come from somewhere. Maybe there is some truth to what I'm being seen with the memories that returned. So yeah, it really helped to just to stop fighting the memories. It really
Yeah.
confirmed that actually, yeah, this is in you, and it's
And
coming
that's
out.
and that was just from massage.
Yeah, a therapeutic massage. So they're trained to release all the trauma that's, caught in your cells on a cellular level. But yeah, it was quite incredible.
Love that. Yeah. Yeah. So Reiki really worked for me because all my chakras were blocked,
Yes.
as they would be. So, and yeah, again, it's whatever works
Yeah,
but for you, yeah. I
absolutely.
love that, yeah. And so how about, for aspiring advocates or public speakers, like what tips would you actually offer them for actually bringing difficult conversations?
Yeah,
Like,
I would say I couldn't speak publicly if I wasn't in a really good place. If I wasn't healed, I would never use my stage as my healing journey. And because I think you'll traumatize your audience. Because obviously I speak about rape and nearly died, and it was very serious, but I have to try and bring a bit of humor in, to have a bit of lightness, to show them that there is hope. Because if I stood on the stage and I was in a place of trauma, I would just traumatize my audience. So I think you have to be really clear. It's great to want to help people and to serve others, but you really need to heal yourself first. And then I also joined a speaking association, which won't find you work or anything, but just to be with other members of the speaking world it's really good to be with tribe people, your tribe. And then it just kind of started slowly. I was always very lucky. Every time I spoke, someone said, "Oh, can you come and speak here? I'm having this conference." And I think you have to obviously let people know what you speak about. So social media is important, even though I love it and I loathe it. You have to really be present. But I don't speak as much as I used to anymore. My life has kind of gone in a different direction. I look after my elderly mum, and as I said at the start, before we went on there, I've just become a grandma. So I'm fortunate. I speak because I want to. I really want to, not that because I need to. I have another income elsewhere that I do, and if it suits me and it's okay, then I will speak, but I don't do as much as I used to.
absolutely. And are there any kind of new projects in like on the pipeline for yourself in the
No, I
future?
just take it as it goes and just see where it all ends up. But I don't know whether it's because of all the recent documentaries or because of more people coming out, and like we had Al Fayed, the documentary about him, and now I think there's 270 women have come forward to say they were abused or raped by him. But there's been a lot more inquiries about asking me to speak about specifically on sexual violence. So it's interesting that it's also coming up to November, which is the 16 days of action against violence against women and girls. So maybe that's why. But yeah, I just really just go with the flow and see where it all goes.
Amazing, yeah. Oh, wow. And so what's one message you could leave with listeners right now about overcoming shame and reclaiming their voice?
I would always just say it's never too late to find your voice. It's never too late to heal so that you don't hold yourself back and you live your best life free from trauma.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's been such great having you on, Madeline. And so, yeah, I mean, where can my listeners find you?
Well, if you just go to any social media platform, you'll normally find me there. But if not, just go to my website, and that has all links to my podcast, my book, all my different social media platforms, which is just madelineblack.co.uk.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much for your time today, Madeline. And
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on.
yeah, congratulations on your success. And yeah, again, congratulations on becoming a grandma as well.
That's one of the nicest promotions I've had.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying that job.
amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, my listeners, for tuning in today. And yeah, please do get in touch if you have any questions about today's episode or if you need any support. And until next time, stay blessed, my beautiful friends.